We'll start recording. All right, so let's make a formal introduction for our listeners. Good afternoon, Armando. My name is Claudio. I'm calling you from Washington, D.C., from the studios in Perfect City. We are very humble and grateful that Armando Gallo accepted our invitation to our show. Armando, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you.
No problem. So let's go back to the beginning. Well, nowadays, what's going on in the world, how's the COVID pandemic, affecting you, your life, your wife, your health, and everything? We live in crazy times, man.
Well, everything stopped, as you well know, in fact, I had booked a flight to London at the end of the 26th of February, and I was going on the set of The Crown and on the third season or fourth season of The Crown. And so I was going to go there a couple of days before to meet up with Peter Gabriel that weekend going. And because it's funny, they were shooting some scenes and they were using the Lyceum.
Wow.
This was the place where I saw Genesis for the first time. And
Wow.
The Crown was shooting there, and so I was gonna get together with Peter and try to talk to him regarding a book that I've been trying to do with him, But then everything exploded in Italy, and so a friend of mine was coming over as well in March to work on a book of my life, of my career, and that was shut down too. And the last job that I did was Nicole Kidman in March 8th. After that, we all went in lockdown. Which was a blessing in disguise for me at the beginning, because my wife had gone through some surgeries and she needed attention. So we just lived 24 hours a day together, 24/7. We fell in love again, and it was really good. We've been married 31 years now. And so because she was much in pain, she had to go through nerve pain. She had to go back to the hospital. And so we were from March, we went all the way to September when she went back for a new surgery, So, and this went on and went on, and so I just took care of my wife, we took care of each other, and I didn't do anything really, and everything stopped. So I think the pandemic was a big slap from the universe, trying to tell us, hey, watch out, you are doing some naughty things. We are destroying this planet. Everything is granted to us. Everything, we are entitled for everything, and we were going through this crazy leadership of Trump, Donald Trump, that to me was like, I already lived that with Silvio Berlusconi in Italy in the 90s, and so, here we are. And Hollywood has been suffering a lot. I've been working as a journalist with movie stars and new movies, reporting new movies and doing articles about people, the protagonists of the movies. And so movies didn't come out and the cinemas were closed. So there was a lot of new things, new sufferings, and the Hollywood Foreign Press, which I'm part of, it kind of suffered that too, So we did a Golden Globe this year. We were the only people so far that we gave Best Movie and Best Actor, Best Actress, And the Oscar is going to the end of March instead of being in February, So we're ready. I personally now, I feel that every day is a gift. That's why they call it the present.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree, man.
And so we have to live every day like it's the last day of our life, because we've been we've been scared shitless by this invisible enemy. But now we all been vaccinated, so if we get COVID or Omicron or any other offsprings, it's gonna be like a bad flu, and we shouldn't be afraid anymore. We should just start living again and do our own thing and look into the future, because that's all we have. We have the present, the future, and so we lost some memories from the past.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad that we are alive.
All right.
I'm glad that we are alive, Armando. We have the opportunity to talk. How many people now, close to 1 million folks here in the U.S. and over the world, 1 million people. So we are very lucky to, be able to listen to music, to see your beautiful photography, talking to you, a legend in the business. So God must exist and they keep us alive.
Yeah. One good thing that Zoom started happening, before before we had Skype, but now nobody's using Skype, and Zoom is more and the WhatsApp,
Of course.
So we have, it's like a dream. We can see each other. Before, I remember when I went to England in 1966 to call my parents in Rome would cost me maybe £5 a minute. It was really very expensive.
Very expensive, yeah.
And everything was done by telegram. And so now we have this gift that we can be in contact. And that reminds me that I would like to send a message to Peter. Release again. I need contact. You remember the song?
Of course, yeah. No, of course, yeah.
And I wonder, the Shock the Monkey came out at that time, and I wonder if I need contact. I wonder. Shock the Monkey was a good number, but the lyrics were very esoteric, But I need contact was a very powerful message, and would be nice if the single would come out again now.
That would be great, man. And now you're talking about Peter Gabriel. I heard he's working on a new album to be released nowadays. I think.
Yeah, I can anticipate. There are 19 songs laid down. 19 songs, and he worked with a band, and so they have to do now. They are in post-production. They have to do strings, some overdubs, some, and with but they are, usually he used to record by himself. Now he laid down this 19 tracks. That probably is going to be 12 for the album. It's supposed to come out in September, but we don't know which year of September.
That's right. Well, hopefully he will be touring soon, man, as well.
I don't know about touring. Touring is very tough.
Yeah.
And he's got this great memory of Kate Bush playing 1 month at the Audio Hammersmith, right? So
that's right. Yeah. Those tickets sold out like that in a couple of days.
Yeah.
It went very fast.
If Peter does that, people will come from all over the world, right?
Well, I would. Yeah, the last time I saw Peter was with a Sting. They did play together. They did a lot of 30 gigs here in the US. I saw them. Very good, man. But let's go back to the beginning. Were you born, before we talk about photography and journalism, were you born like in a musical family in Italy? I mean, were you, your brother, your sister were listening to music?
I was born in a little village, a very ancient village near Venice.
Yeah.
And in the mainland, just in the Venice is in the middle of the lagoon, and this village was was an historic river where all the food was being shipped every day into Venice, So, and there were villages every 2 or 3 miles. There was a village with a church and stuff. So I was born in one of these villages, which is called Oriago, and it's mentioned, it's very funny that it's mentioned also in the Divine Comedy by Dante, and so it's been around for a while. And so I discovered all this when I made recently when Google came up, and you can find everything. And so I was born there. My father was a painter, but when I was born in 1944. He was still at war, and he suffered a lot in wars, so painting kind of saved him a little bit, because when he was a child prodigy in a way, he was very, very good, but then he spent 10 years in wars, and he was born in 1916, and you can imagine, he was the right age to go to war. He found himself in Africa, in Spain, in Yugoslavia, and horrible, and so I was never. Recently, I found something that he wrote. He said, "La guerra è una maledizione di Dio. War is a wrath of God."
Yeah, I completely agree, man.
He never wanted to see a war movie, and so we moved to Rome when I was 9, or at least on the outskirts, in a little village outside Rome.
Yeah.
So my dad. Being an artist, before he passed away, I did a show for him, and I did an interview with him so I could write it in the booklet for them. And one of these questions was, "Is life of an artist easy?" And also, no, is life of an artist difficult? He said, "No, it's not difficult, but it's difficult for the people that choose to live with them."
Oh, of course. I need to ask that your wife.
Yeah, and I'm lucky because I got a beautiful wife, I described her as an angel falling from the sky.
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
How about for you? But what kind of music were you listening to when you were, I don't know, like 15 or 20? Because before Genesis, right? Remember that in Italy, right? I have interviewed Leone, I have interviewed PFM, Banco. Those were very, very progressive bands.
I know.
Italy.
In a way, I came back to Italy in 1970. I moved to London in June 1966.
Yeah.
And then I came back to Italy in May 1971 because I had discovered Le Orme.
Mm-hmm.
Was a Venetian band, a trio that were inspired by Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but going back about music, and I used to sing as a little boy,
Really?
Yesterday I was looking at the Instagram of a big Italian rock star called Vasco Rossi, and he was living the same way with me, because in Italy we have Sanremo Song Festival, il Festival della Canzone Italiana in Sanremo. It's happening right now this week. So everybody in Italy used to have this little booklet with all the lyrics.
Yep.
Sorrisis e Canzoni, Smiles and Songs, that later on became a magazine that I started working from Los Angeles in 1975. But in the 50s, there were, everybody, you would listen to the song in the radio and then people would sing them, and I remember I used to sing Grazie dei Fiori, but I was, because probably I was maybe 6 or 7, right? And people used to make fun of me, probably. So I used to sing it, but I would be on a chair and I would sing it looking at the wall, because I didn't like people, my relatives, people, they would be gathering on a Sunday, everybody, together, eating and drinking, and then until night, and then everybody would sing. I was the kid that would belt it out.
Sure.
Then I went to boarding school with a Salesian, and I found a photograph of mine on a microphone, I'm singing. So I was always into that, but when I discovered music, really, my brother was writing songs, and he had an audition with RCA, and I went to the RCA audition, and my brother Claudio, and uh, and uh, this was 1962 or 60, and I went to this audition, and I found that's the first time I saw a recording studio, and to me it was really like a world opened up, you know. And then I went to London because I had a pen pal, a girlfriend, you know, called Gail Simpson, you know, and she had just seen the Beatles. This was September 1963, and nobody knew the Beatles outside England. And so 3 weeks later, I went back to Italy with my Beatles hair, you know, and I had these Cuban boots, you know, they were with the high heels and stuff. Everybody thought I went crazy, because even everybody, even my brothers and sisters, my mom, you know, and people at work, you know, but then a couple of months later, or a month later, someone on television, Fausto Leali and Ricky Gianco, started singing the Italian version of the Beatles songs. That's, oh my God, you know, they know my secret, you know. So, and then they became, their songs were released in 64, January 64, and they all went in the charts. And that's how we got into the Beatles, you know. So when I moved to London, I had to do actually 16 months of national service.
Yeah.
So I had to go in the army, you know, but I was sold on the Beatles, on the English, Jerry and the Pacemakers, the Searchers, the Kings. Oh my God, I love the Kings. And I didn't care much for the Rolling Stones. There you go, you know.
Really?
Yeah. I started liking the Rolling Stone only when they did 21st century 19 Nervous Breakdown. So then interest, you know, but and Get Off My Cloud, yeah, you know. But so later on, but 67, 68, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, I was really into the clean looking bands, you know. Probably because I was with this English family that liked that, you know. They didn't, you know. But I broke up with that. I moved to London, you know. I had my first place, you know, and I was writing for a magazine. I started writing for the magazine that I used to read in Italy.
Yeah. But let's go back to the story. How you end up from Italy? You save enough money to. You didn't have a job. You finished the army, the equivalent, right?
Yes.
Military service, and then you end up going to.
I was always. It's funny because you said you did a lot of work. Of course, I did a lot of work. Even when you know, I didn't like school in a way. So I found myself. I became a technical draftsman. You know.
Yeah.
So I went to work for this company that he was building a highway between Catania and Messina in Sicily. Yeah. And I learned to do all the stuff that usually land surveyors do, you know. Yeah. So I realized that I could go into I could get a diploma as a land surveyor. There were 5 years, right? And I had friends that were doing it. I did it in 2 years, going to evening classes.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and during the period that I discovered the Beatles as well, you know. So I did that for 2 years. You know, I got my degree, and I went to work for an American company that was building a town in Libya, and they were based in Rome. So I could speak English, you know, because I learned to write English, and then I went to England in 63, you know, so, but then I had to go in the army. And so I did it very quickly. I could have been, my diploma allow me to be an officer, but I didn't want to wait another 2 years to be there. So my passport was blocked, so I thought, let's do this national service and get out of here, And that, as I suggest to every young person, when you spend your first 20 years in your family, with your teachers, with your friends, and you learn everything you need to know to go. Just go one-way ticket and just go in the place in the world that you would love to be. You would like to go. Just the world is your oyster, said Shakespeare, right? So that's what I did. I went. I packed my bags, and but while I waited probably 3 months after the national service. I wanted my hair to grow, and I used to pick up the English newspapers in Rome, and I used to answer to all the adverts for technical draftsmen, So when I moved to London, the first Monday I went to one of the people that answered me, and I got a job, Yeah. And I was working for Chamberlain Parking Systems. They were building car parks.
Wow.
Thinking about 1966 to me was like science fiction,
Sure.
Because, in fact, recently I saw the Fellini's 8½. That was shot in 1962, I think, 62, 63. And the movie starts with a traffic jam. And the guy comes out of the window of the car, and he goes up in the sky with a balloon, and then he was dreaming, and you hear, "Buongiorno, dottore," "Good morning, doctor," and he was and he's in a hospital. He had a nervous breakdown. He wakes up in the hospital, and that's the movie. Go on from there. And but Fellini already saw that the future would have been people would have been all packed, traffic jams and everything, that he picked up again when he did Roma, in 6-7 years later. So anyway, so I had a good job there, and I was in London, and I broke up with my girlfriend I was in Croydon, and Croydon was good only because the Kings were coming from there.
Yeah.
and so I moved into Fulham. In fact, was nearby where the Rolling Stones were living. When I read the book of Keith Richards. So while I was in the army, I was posted at the border of Yugoslavia. Now it's Slovakia, and there, I don't know why and how, there must have been a repetitor in the airwaves. I could hear Radio Luxembourg really, really well. I had this little radio, that my girlfriend in England gave me as a present, and so every Sunday night I would go as a volunteer. I would go in the patruglia, there would be. We would just check all the post stations along the border, we would check them out. But by going at 10 o'clock, nobody wanted to go at 10 o'clock, you go to bed, but so I would, every Sunday, I would just go there, and in the middle of looking at the starry sky, I would listen to Radio Luxembourg, which would be the top 40.
Of course.
So I had a lot of knowledge of what was happening musically in London. Plus, my girlfriend used to send me Melody Maker and New Music, Record Mirror, I remember. So, but when I went to London, I started sending. I used to go to concerts. I used to buy albums. I used to send them to 2 friends that I made in the army. They were really. We were 3 little freaks, that we like English music at the time. And I remember I bought in London. I bought a Beatles wig. So I was taking pictures of my friends, with the Beatles wig and the uniform, the uniform, but the Beatles wig. And I used to sell them to them. That's how I got into photography in a way,
Yeah, yeah. Wow, good for you, man.
And so you can stop me anytime, man, because...
No, keep on talking. I'm recording. This the whole YouTube, when we will upload the stuff to YouTube, everybody's going to be watching us. So keep on talking. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have I think I read the first interview with Rita
Pavone.
was by like an accident, right? I mean, you didn't have a camera. You were not a journalist.
You know what happened? What happened that I found there was this news shop in Old Compton Street. They used to sell all the European magazines. Now we're talking about 1966, 67. Going from Rome, a kid going to London was like going to the moon.
Of course,
because I found a copy of Big, the magazine that I used to read in Italy, and I got so excited that I wrote a letter to the editor. I found our magazine in London. I probably knew, but probably didn't know. And the charts, they were publishing the charts, the English charts, they were old, maybe 3 months old, 2 months. I said, your charts are from England are really terrible. I can send them to you every day, every week if you want to, This is how La fortuna aiuta gli audaci. Fortune helps the audacious, right? By mistake, I sent that letter, and then one morning I got a telegram: call us in reverse, call us in R, and give us a call, and we pay for the call. His name was Sergio Modugno. He was the the what do you call it? Vice editor in chief. The guy below the editor in chief. So I'm going to work, Chamberlain Parking System, Victoria, and I'm in the train from Croydon, and I open the papers, and there's Rita Pavone. She's in town because she had recorded a song called "A Heart." She had a big hit in Italy, Cuore, and it was an American song, called "Hurt," and she recorded the English version. And she was number 19 in the charts, so that they wanted her to do Top of the Pops.
Yeah.
So I got to work. I called the magazine. I spoke to this guy Sergio Modugno, and I told him this. Rita Pavone was huge in Italy at the time, right? She was this little girl with red hair, and she'd done every single was going in the charts. So he said, do an interview. She's our friend. Do an interview. Take some pictures, and can you write? I said, what kind of studies did you do? And he said, well, I'm a land surveyor. Yeah, but can you write? So I called up the record company, which was RCA, and they got me in touch with a publicist. And the publicist got me an interview with her at 2:00 on the same day.
My God.
The Conduit Hotel. So I went there. I borrowed the camera from my girlfriend's mother, and she showed me how to.
Yes, sir.
So I did the interview, and I wrote it the same day. I went in a coffee shop, I was totally new at this, So, and in the movies, probably I've seen front page in the movie, some movie like that, and all these writers, all these journalists, they go there and they do this, and then they go in a coffee shop, or they start, I went in a coffee shop. They write, they smoke, they drink, they write, Yeah. But I didn't know how to type. So I wrote it in longhand. I went in a coffee shop. I wrote it in longhand, and then I put something they should never do. I put the film, the unexposed film, and the writing in an envelope, and I went to Trafalgar Square, where the post office was 24 hours, and I sent it to the magazine. And a couple of weeks or 2-3 weeks later, I got a copy of the magazine, and then they said, where shall we send the money? To your parents in Rome or to you in London? And I said, fuck, they even pay me for this? This is great.
Oh, do you remember how much it paid you at the time?
15,000 lira, which at the time could be, you could have 10 good meals in a restaurant.
No bad.
Yeah.
No bad.
Yeah.
And then, so you sent it to the newspaper, and then what was before we go into the Beatles, what was the second, what did you do after that? I mean, in your head, you were thinking, man, if I did the first one.
Yeah, so, and then there was Sandy Shaw won the Eurovision Song Contest.
Yeah.
And she was an English singer with a song called Puppet on a String. That was the very last time, 1967, that England won the Eurovision Song Contest.
Yeah, wow.
And the last time was an Italian band, called Manskin. And so I went to the BBC because she was performing there, and I had an interview with her, and I wrote Sandy Shaw, and then the Trogs were number one with a girl like you, down, that wild thing, and after in the meantime, with my magazine, I went straight away to EMI Records. I said, I want to interview the Beatles. So people were laughing at me, because the Beatles weren't doing interviews anymore.
Yeah. And, wow. Yeah.
But I made good friends with a guy called Jim Watson, and he was working in the international department, and so he used to take me to see all these bands that they were very fascinated, because apparently I was the only Italian journalist that they knew. That's how incredible that period was. In fact, I never met, in my first 5 years of career, I never met any Italian journalist as a correspondent from London, and so he was getting me into bands like, I remember, was The Creation, the Cubas, and the manager of the Cubas was a very interesting guy called Tony Stratton Smith.
Well, the man himself.
The man himself, that later on, he became manager of the Nice, Keith Emerson's band, and he pulled the Nice away from Immediate Records, and then he started the Charisma label, the famous Charisma label.
Wow.
With the Nice and with a band called Rare Bird.
Yeah.
Rare Bird recorded, they had an album produced by John Anthony, the guy that produced Van de Graaff Generator, Genesis, and the first album of Queen. And he was a DJ that became a record producer. We were all, they call it the swing in London, but we didn't know we were swinging. Everything was possible. People say, "Oh, that's how you become a journalist. That's easy." At that time it was easy. No, people wouldn't move, but they wouldn't go to places. I found myself that I was the only one. I didn't have any competitions. And so I could work as an architectural designer. Because at the time we were doing experimental parking lots, mechanical car parks, when you park the car in the middle of the city. And I worked there until the end of 1970, because rock and roll was happening in the evening. So and I was growing up. I was finding myself. I didn't know what I was doing. That then I had my camera stolen. I had burgled, so I had the camera, the typewriter stolen. So I stopped. Probably I couldn't do anything for maybe 6 months or 10 months because he didn't have any money. And then when I started again, I started shooting. I was shooting in color slides because you could have them processed straight away, and you send the color slides. You didn't have to do the printing,
That's right. Yeah.
Because I tried printing as well, but it would take so much time that if you're a photographer and you become the printer, that's all you do, But I wanted to meet people. I wanted to interview them, and I wanted to shoot the pictures, write the story, and color slides were the best thing. The bad thing was that those pictures from that time, I never thought about getting them back. I was very naive, I was 23, 24, 25, and which is now, it would be like being 16, 17 now, and as someone it puts your name on the paper and publish your stories, and I thought, oh my God, this is so great, I never really thought about, can I have my color slides back, I even gave an autograph that Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr did an autograph for me to the big magazine, and I did a photocopy for me and I sent the originals. Can you believe that?
Why?
Well, there were different times,
Yeah, sure.
There were different times. I wanted to be real, I wanted to make sure, that I thought that was the right thing to do.
Sure. And then after the Beatles, I think you interview Procol Harum, right? After that was the second.
Yeah, Procol Harum was. I was lucky that I was on a train going back from Victoria Station in London to Croydon, and there was this guy sat in front of me, and I said, "Are you Matthew Fisher?" And he was the organ player of Procol Harum, and he lived with mom and dad, and he lived in Croydon. So and he invited me to his house. I did an interview with him, and he invited me to. They were number one with A Whiter Shade of Pale.
Man,
so because I always used to chase up the things that I loved, I thought still to today is one of my top 5 songs, one of my top 5 recording, A Whiter Shade of Pale, and especially by and it starts with the organ. So meeting this guy was just fascinating. And he invited me to a concert that we're playing at the Savile Theatre in London on Sunday. So I got there. Again, this is a time that if you go there, the rehearsal, nobody stops you. You go through the artist entrance, you go in. And I went there and I tried to see him where he is. Where's Procol? Oh, they're not here yet. In the meantime, there's the band opening for them, doing a sound check, and guess who it was?
No,
Jimi Hendrix.
My God, man! Wow.
I still remember he had a pair of pants in trousers that were crushed velvet, green crushed velvet, and he was, to me, he was so gentle and so beautiful, in television, I saw him biting the guitar, and so I wrote a piece about that, telling because in the news he went to Top of the Pops doing Purple Haze, I think, and all the papers said, "Oh, the monster," whoa, turn the TV off, so all the parents were telling their kids, to be careful, I saw a movie about that period of Jimi Hendrix, and he was stopped by the police all the time, and but anyway, so I did that, and then I discovered I used to go to the UFO club, and I discovered this band that were playing, and they were, and I wasn't into drugs at the time, I was an experiment. I was very, very naive, and everybody was gone, and this band was Pink Floyd.
My God, man. Wow.
And so I did an article called Musica contro I fiori, music versus flowers. And I was describing that the flower power that was happening in California was very fluffy, when in England, there were bands that were really experimenting with music, and I was talking about the Beatles themselves did this amazing album, Sgt. Pepper, that to me is the very first progressive album.
Yeah, no, really. It's a very good album.
Progressive rock started with Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah,
really.
No, yeah,
and there was everything there, and in fact, you can still play it now, and it's fantastic. 55 years later.
So you were making money at the time. Now, I mean, you were writing articles. You have your own camera. You were moving places. You began.
I still didn't have my own camera. I still didn't have my own camera.
No,
because I was saving. I was supposed to get married. So we were saving and stuff like that. So, and then I went to Italy with Andrew Loog Oldham. He was the manager of the Rolling Stones, okay? And he formed his own company called Immediate, which was a very, they had P.P. Arnold. P.P. Arnold was a black singer from Los Angeles, and she recorded a Cat Stevens song called First Cut is the Deepest, and it went #1. So the same thing that happened with Charisma, they were lucky to have a #1 hit with Rare Bird and Sympathy. The same thing happened with Immediate Records, and that this is #1, and they had also the Small Faces and other people, so I went to Italy with P.P. Arnold and the Small Faces because I wrote the Italian. God, I forgot about. But I wrote the Italian lyrics of the Small Faces. The Small Faces were #1 with Ichiku Park, but Ichiku Park was I couldn't find any lyrics, plus it was very rocky. And so I found a very quiet number, which was very romantic. It was called Green Circle. And the bass player was singing. Steve Marriott wasn't singing there. The bass player, what's his name? Come on. Oh, God. And I went to Olympic Studios, and I helped them to record the song. At the same time, I wrote the Italian lyrics of a song. P.P. Arnold had the #1 hit with First Cut is the Deepest, but then she recorded another song, Time Will Come, and I wrote the Italian lyrics for that, and she was gonna record it, and that's when I met Mick Jagger, because Mick Jagger was producing her album, and I remember but he didn't have time to do it, so he said, "Well, the guy that wrote the lyrics is here. We could do it. Well, we can do it. We can do it in Los Angeles, and we can get an Italian waiter to do it." And I thought, motherfucker, So he didn't give me. That's why it took me a long time to get over that. He didn't even look at me. He was a real asshole. But at the time, the Rolling Stones were supposed to be assholes. They're like the punk of the '60s in a way, and but that's another interesting story.
Go ahead.
Before, when P.P. Arnold went to, we're still in 1967, when she went to Los Angeles to pick up her two kids and moving them to England, her backing band had a residency at the Speakeasy Club, which was a rock and roll club that all the people in the industry used to go there between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock at night, and it was run by Italians. The food was great. And the band ended up being The Nice with Keith Emerson, right?
Wow.
But so anyway, I went to Italy with P.P. Arnold, the Small Faces, and Andrew Loog Oldham to launch the Immediate label. And that's when the people in the magazine met me for the first time. And everybody thought, oh, so Armando Gallo really exists.
Yeah.
And so that's in a way how, to me, it was easy, but at the same time was also a pastime. I didn't take it seriously until probably 1970, okay? And that's when there was a new magazine that was called CIAO 2001, and the new editor called me up in London and he said, I don't think the magazine is using you properly, and I would like to start using you really well, but you have to assure me that you can write 2 articles a week, text and photos. I said, yes, I can do that. And I don't want to hear about the Beatles. I don't want to hear about the Rolling Stones. You have to write all about the new band coming out of England, he was so well informed in a way, and his name was Saverio Rotondi. And it was one of those things that changed your life because, England was going through an incredible musical renaissance, because the Beatles split up and it was very traumatic. People wouldn't believe that. If you remember, there was a lot of people that went for Paul, a lot of people went for John. John was writing nasty songs about him. There was a lot of friction.
Sure.
And they split up in a way in April 1970, So with that, there's no people started looking for, okay, what's out here? And there were so many bands that picked up playing inspired by the Beatles. And so they were coming up like, I remember writing like a field of mushroom after an August storm,
That's right. One after another. Yeah.
Yes. And there were so many great bands. And one of them was Genesis,
Wow.
But Rare Bird, as we were saying, I became very good friends with Rare Bird, and that's when the Italian keyboard player from Leorme came over to see me, and he wanted me to get him to know Keith Emerson, and the guy couldn't speak any English. He used to call Kate Emerson, and his name was Tony Pagliuca. He was the keyboard player of Leorme, and I got him to meet up with Graham Field. He was the keyboard player of Rare Bird, and he was really a genius on Hammond organ, and he got him turned on in the Hammond organ, and Rare Bird at the same time they played a concert, and the opening band was this little band, very shy band called Genesis, and they loved them. And so they told Charisma, listen, there's this band hasn't signed with anybody yet. You should check them out. So it was Rare Bird that got the connection with Charisma Records and they got the contract with Charisma in March 1971, And and Charisma, there was my favorite band at the time. Actually, my favorite band was the one that I would never stop playing was King Crimson.
Okay.
And Pawn Hearts. Pawn Hearts by Van der Graaf Generator and 21st Century Schizoid Man, by King Crimson.
King Crimson, yeah, of course.
That first album by King Crimson was amazing. And in a way, Genesis to me were like a band that were trying to be like King Crimson, but they didn't have the power that Van der Graaf Generator had. So the first album, Trespass, I heard it was very, very a little weak, very flowery a little bit, but when I heard the second album, Nursery Crime, I fell in love with it. I still remember going back to, I remember Tony Stratton Smith, and now he was the chairman of Charisma, and he gave me the album. He said, "Go home and listen to it." So I remember going home and putting the needle down.
The needle.
Bam,
bam, bam. Oh man.
Oh God, and that just that first number was what 9 minutes long, and there were so many musical passages that I realized that this band was really worth checking out, So I did, and I asked if I could go and interview them, They were rehearsing in this horrible, humid place. It was a rundown place. Actually, it was a place it's called the Inferno in Plumstead, and it burned down, so they could. The place was still up, but so they used to rent the place to band that wanted to rehearse, And I went out for lunch with them, and from Charisma, and they said, "We hear that you took some pictures of Genesis. Can we see them?" And apparently the band told them that I took some good pictures, and they bought 12 pictures, and they paid me £20.
Wow.
And I was very happy because it was, at the time, it was a month rent, right? I used to pay £5 a week rent. So in my part, so wow. Plus it was the first photo sales to a record company in England,
Good for you.
And one of these pictures ended up in Foxtrot album cover.
Yeah, well for you, man. You still have them, the picture, or no? You kept them? Those you kept?
Yeah, one of them is in the Genesis book.
Yeah.
In fact, there's one particular picture. There's only one naked bulb on, so it was very dark. But I took these pictures, and it was published. Prog magazine a couple of months ago, 3 months ago, they did an article, a cover story of Nursery Crime, and they used one of these pictures.
Wow. We're talking about 71, right?
Yeah, 71, and so going to 72, and the band is. You see, I found out later. My stories from London were followed by a lot of kids that were into rock and roll, into pop music, because there was nothing in Italy. The radio wouldn't play any of these songs. Was very, very, still very much into the Italian songs, they wouldn't. And so I heard later on, from people that became rock stars, like Zucchero and Vasco Rossi, and they said, "God, when I was a kid, I used to go and buy 2001. I used to go and see your column, because the only thing we could find out for real, because we wouldn't get any news." And when I presented a new band, people were looking for the album. In fact, Nursery Crime, or even Nursery Crime, apparently got into Italy as an import from Holland, and they sold maybe 3,000 copies over a weekend, So the record Phonogram published it in Italy as well, and they were booked on an Italian tour, and I didn't go to the Italian tour because I was discovering another band, which was called UFO.
Wow!
And I went to see Free, the band Free, with Rogers, the band. They still had the bass player Andy Fraser, the kid that made and they passed away. He died.
Could be, yeah.
And I went to see them in Liverpool. Okay, I had an interview with them. I could take pictures, and the Italian record company needed pictures of that. So, and the opening band was this young band that were amazing, and there was a UFO, and they didn't have any record deal yet, and they were with Chrysalis, but Chrysalis didn't put the money up to do an album yet. So I booked them for an Italian tour because there was an Italian friend who was a promoter, and he said, "Give me the band. I'll book them for 5 or 6 gigs, and I gave them £100 a night, and you can come down and be like you have the tour manager." So it was really a great thing to do. It was a lot of fun, I'm 25, 26, and I used to read about this, all these English journalists going on tour with band in America, So great, I could go on tour with the English band in Italy. And the UFO, we did the tour in Italy the same time that Genesis did the very first tour in Italy. In fact, we were playing in the same places one day before or one day after,
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and Phil Mogg, the singer of the band, went on to be really big. They got recorded by George Martin, and maybe 10 years later, I met him here in Los Angeles, and Phil Mogg told me, "I tell you, we went all around the world, but the first Italian tour, man, is still the best."
Good for you. So you were a journalist, a photographer, a tour manager, man. That began opening a lot of doors for you.
Yeah. Plus, I was the man in London for 3 Italian record companies.
No, good for you. And then so Genesis was playing, every other night or in between nights at the same time. You were UFO, and you stayed. Were the Genesis folks knew that you were helping out a UFO, or you kind of lost contact?
I just again, Genesis was just one of the good bands that I found. There were so many other bands, any good bands. I loved Ground Dogs. There was a band called Ground Dogs. There was another great fusion band called If.
Yeah.
And Head, Hands and Feet.
Yeah.
There were great bands. There was a band like called Spooky Tooth. That way became Foreigners in the and there were and Steve Van der Graaf. But I used to try to break bands in Italy. Like I took Camel in Italy, the band Camel in Italy, for 20 pounds a night. They wanted to go to another country and rehearse their craft, with an audience. Because in England they could do maybe one concert a week, okay, in a college on Saturday and Sundays. And while if you go on tour in Italy, you can play 6 or 7 concerts in 5 days. Because sometimes you play 2 shows, afternoon and evening, So it was a very good exercise, So I channel into that. I even took Deep Purple to Italy,
Really?
big time, with an incredible scheme that, you know, there were lots of riots in Italy. People didn't want to pay for rock concerts, right?
Really?
We're talking about 70, 72, 73, you know?